I had to rip myself away from a board game to record this. I guess since I decided to start with that, I might as well say I was playing Bullet Star solo. Star, like the emoticon, if you're wondering. The Bullet series is really fun. Think puzzle fighter with a shoot 'em up theme. Mechanically, it's not a shoot 'em up; it's a puzzle game. But it's really damn fun. If you have Tabletop Simulator, I'd recommend checking out the official mod there. I've heard it's really good. I've only looked it up myself, but that's because I have the actual board games in my room, so why wouldn't I play them? So anyway, I won't get lost talking about that because that's not the subject of this video. I went into the dungeon. I explored a bit more of it. You can sort of compare the map if you want. I think I had missed one biome chest last video. I can't pinpoint it right now. I also took all the paintings and placed them around. You might notice them in the various houses around here. I think I'm going to need more housing at some point, but I'll worry about that later. I also went into the underground desert. I didn't explore too much of it, but just enough to find an extractinator, which lets me sift through certain blocks, including, do I have any silt? Yep. And slush. And it can also sift through desert fossils. All of this here is from all the desert fossils I gathered before. You just place blocks onto it, and it turns them into more useful things. Same with silt. The difference is that the fossils give you, I think, amber and sturdy fossils. And I wanted sturdy fossils for a certain purpose. I really should have done most of this off camera, which I did. I had hundreds of fossils. But I might as well sift through all this as well. If it weren't for the fossils, I wouldn't really care, because it just gives you all of the ores and gemstones. Occasionally something more rare than that. But yeah. So if I loot all this, and then quick stack it. Oh, apparently I don't have any tin in here. Well, there we go. Now, I worry that this is not enough, but the point of these fossils is not to make anything like a weapon or armor, although there are options. I think using this armor set with the consumable bone throwing weapons was really good. The javelins in particular lodge themselves inside the enemy, and each javelin lodged in it deals damage over time on top of the initial hit. Like, I seem to remember fighting Skeletron with this set because it was really good for that. But no, I'm actually just going to make a bunch of scarab bombs, which essentially explode in a straight line that's 3 tiles wide. And I'm going to use that to dig a hole all the way to hell. Technically, I don't have to do that. I could say, go to the bottom of the dungeon or jungle and just reach hell that way. And there is a way to just teleport into hell, which I could probably do that, but I just wanted to show this off. Because I do like scarab bombs a fair bit. I think 35 should get me a decent way down. I also have an idea for a very minor build that I might put together. Now, what else before I get started on that? Well, first of all, I'm going to combine these 3 informational accessories, which I think I can filter them out. Yep. To make the REK 3000. It just has all their combined effects, and it takes up 1 slot. So there we go. What am I missing in terms of informational accessories? I don't really want to make the cell phone and everything. Oh, I accidentally stacked the magic mirror in here. I'm gonna go ahead and sell that. I have the metal detector and 2 other things which I know where to get from. Okay. I also did some angler quests, and I got the angler hat, which gives you fishing power, and that's what I use the 3rd loadout for. Typically, if I do a lot of fishing, I just put the fishing stuff here. At some point, I got a fisherman's pocket guide, which is an information accessory for fishing. I need 2 other information accessories from the angler, and the other 2 that combine with the metal detector. And then I can make the cell phone. I guess that might happen. I'm more so doing it just because they added an achievement to get the final upgrade of all the informational accessories. But it's not worth your time otherwise. It's a grind. You might progress through the game faster than you find most of that stuff. And especially if you don't want to do much fishing, then don't bother with the cell phone, I would say. Okay. Yeah, I left all this stuff in my inventory because I'm gonna go make something at a crimson altar. Should be a pretty short trek. Oh, I can... No, not that. I could use the rabbit, I suppose, which... The rabbit can make use of my double jump items. I think any mount that runs at high speed works that way. Now, there should be an altar very close. There, yeah. The void bag. I'm just gonna make it and get out of here. Summons the void vault. Can be used to store your items. Stored items can only be accessed by you. So far, it's a piggy bank, including the stored coins thing. Functions as an extended inventory when open. May pick up overflowing items when open. Right-click to close. That's going onto my hotbar. I kept the ropes just in case I want to do something, but there's no real point. I can buy as many of them from the merchant as I want. I guess I'll throw them in there. So now, you see the 2 separate inventories. There is a mechanical difference between these 2. And check this out. Off screen I made Night Owl and Shine potions, and I'm gonna throw them in here. And since this counts as more inventory, I can favorite items in here. So with all the stuff that I want immediately on hand, I think maybe I could put some of it in here. Like, I'm not sure if... Let's say... No. Okay, it doesn't work that way. Why am I experimenting with that now? There are some things that you can use directly from the Void Vault without even having to look at it like this. So, for example, I can press the buff key and it'll use one of every potion in here. The effect of which isn't already active. It doesn't waste potions, just to be clear. So that's another purpose for the bolts. And I guess that's all. The thing is, there's basically nothing left to do other than go to hell. So to hell with me, then. To hell with myself. I think I would want it to be right here. Yep, that's perfect. And actually, the fact that I have this particular hook means that I can be very exact with how I use these. They can still hurt you if you're right on top of them, but the blast is very small. And I don't remember if the entire column that it strikes through gets messed up or not. And if this surgical cut straight through the world looks unappealing, don't worry, I actually have a plan for the aesthetics. It's a very simple plan, but it's a plan, nonetheless. The only problem here is that I'm not sure if this many will make it to the bottom. Yeah, probably not, but still. This is going to be a largely uneventful part. I'll mostly be doing this, and then probably just looting the Underworld for everything it's worth. This won't be the end of the first half of the game just yet. Not unless it plays out very differently from how I think it will. Oh, that might not work out. Yeah, I thought that would happen. In terms of notes, I don't really have much of anything. But, Algol mentioned that the Mushroom Boy summon is actually a Dead Cells thing. And I do remember that now. I have seen it. So I guess it's not real logic being either out of touch or using lingo ironically because it's outdated, which I'm not sure if that would be any better. What's the best analogy I can come up with? Let's say just because you're ironically making garbage doesn't mean that it's not garbage. That's the whole problem with that whole way of thinking. Like if some people are sick of certain trendy memes on the internet and they perpetuate those memes, but ironically it's like, you are no different from what you hate. Straight up. In fact, you might be worse. Because maybe that's kind of pretentious. Anyway. About Dead Cells, I think I made a mistake with that game. Because fans of it, miscellaneous YouTubers, were raving about it, and I don't remember how I ended up watching videos about Dead Cells at the time. But everyone was like, this is the best and one of the most difficult action roguelikes ever made. And they managed to convince me that I would love the game. I didn't. I think the people in question are huge fans of From Software and anything that's imitating From Software. That should have been my first red flag that I probably shouldn't care what they think about difficulty in games. Not because it's bad. Like, not because specifically From Software and Souls-likes and whatnot are bad at difficulty, but that in terms of gameplay, they're not the kind of games that I'm interested in because of challenge and gameplay alone. At least that's where my head's at. And if their main frame of reference for excellent gameplay mechanics and difficulty is From Software, it's like, wow, that's really narrow and kind of... Quite frankly, I don't even know if they know what they're talking about. Oh, that's funny. This fairy is pointing out the chest that I just opened. I'll take it, just so it doesn't distract me later. But for instance, I made the mistake of... It's not the first time something like this has happened, and it's part of why I've started having much more faith in myself, because there was a time where I was doubting if I really know what I'm talking about. Because, hey, no one knows the games that I really love. Maybe they're onto something, maybe I'm missing out. maybe I should defer to someone else's opinion and see where that leads me. And I mean, I'm happy I tried, but I didn't like Lies of P as one example. It's fine, I might go back to it. I didn't hate it, but it's like... Again, this is what you think the best combat mechanics, the best enemy design and bosses are. Seriously. This rudimentary, functional but unremarkable combat is your favorite thing. Am I just an arrogant jerk? That was part of my whole thing. It's like, I don't want to be like the kind of people I hate who refuse to leave their box and assume they know better than anyone else, everyone else. Okay, how far did that get me? That got me halfway there. Okay, I'll mind the rest of the way and yap about this. I think I haven't finished my thoughts about Dead Cells and anything, really. I'm kind of all over the place. Apologies. You know, for now, I'm going to dig out a 2-tile wide tunnel, and then I'll dig out the last one off camera. Or, well, who knows, actually, what's best. I don't know how much time I'm gonna need to finish my ramblings. I could use some food, because food helps. Oh, look at how fast you dig with that. So anyway, the things I like about Lies of P have virtually nothing to do with the core combat mechanics. I actually think the game is very heavily dominated by parrying, to the point where if you're not parrying basically everything, you're not really playing the game right. That's the impression I got left with. Maybe there's a shake-up later on in the game, and that no longer ends up being true because of that. But I sincerely doubt that. I thought the shake-up was, hey look, there's a type of attack that you can't use iframes to avoid. And I thought, oh, so I'm actually forced to use movement? That's interesting. But as it turns out, you can just parry the attacks that can't be rolled through. So it's like, oh, so they don't matter. So I'm just gonna do the same thing anyway, regardless of those attacks existing. And apparently there's an upgrade that just lets you roll through, I think they're called Fury attacks anyway. Which is... why? Why is there an upgrade that removes a design decision that I assume is meant to serve an interesting purpose? For what it's worth, I did notice that some of the Fury attacks had little to no tracking, and you could just position yourself to avoid them. And that was kind of refreshing, because I'm sick of relying on either iframes or iframes with a flavor of sword fighting, which is what parrying is. But anyway, I might go back to Lies of P someday and finish it. I am interested in how New Game Plus apparently... I don't know how much it changes the game itself, but apparently it gives you brand new passives on the skill tree. Maybe those passives just make the game easier, so that the next time around you can clown on the bosses and things are not different. But I would hope that the game is also meaningfully harder in New Game Plus. Okay, I didn't mean to. The whole point of this is to stop the water from drowning me. I will need water eventually when we get to the lava layer. I lost my place. That's the middle. There we are. Now before I keep going... oh, that's a pressure plate. For a boulder trap, I'm pretty sure. Because that's one of those pressure plates that breaks if you try to mine it or step on it. I suppose. Wait a minute, I have the void bag. I don't need to care. I can just pick up everything. Including the star statue that I don't really need. But hey. And the reason I bring up both Lies of P and Dead Cells in the same thought is because they're very close together in my head. I think they're both influenced by From Software to a fault, just in different ways. They both have a obviously ridiculously dominant parry mechanic. They're both very punishing, but in terms of challenge and enemy design, they're not really throwing anything that complex or demanding at you. And apparently they both have communities that think they're the most hardcore of gamers, and they have the best, most difficult games, and this is how you do difficulty, right? That's the thing I hate the most. I would play anything regardless of difficulty, and I enjoy games simply for being difficult a lot of the time. Which, if I don't change my mind after this playthrough, you'll see one example of a game like that. But even I wouldn't go out of my way to say, oh, I know what good difficulty is, and you don't, and you should listen to me. I don't know. I do value humility a lot, so when people do that, it just annoys me. And especially if I end up trusting people when they say stuff like that because they manage to convince me somehow, and then I just don't see what they see at all. It's so disappointing. In the case of Dead Cells, it particularly stings because I think I got Lies of P as a birthday present, so it's like, hey, big deal. Yeah, they could have given me something else, but it's a gift. It's fine. And I asked for Lies of P, so maybe I regret that. But when it comes to Dead Cells, I bought it with all of the DLC because I was so utterly convinced that I would enjoy it, and it took me several hours to realize that I simply do not like the game on a fundamental level. It's a lot of small things. I don't like how heavy and immobile the character feels. I feel like that's where a lot of the difficulty comes from. Enemies are blindingly fast. I think some of them have tracking properties. Huge hitboxes. They hit really hard. It almost feels like the player's undertuned and the enemies are overtuned when compared to, say, arcade action games. Oh, hello, Tim. Tim is a rare enemy in the, why can't I whip him? I think he's a Monty Python reference, which I do appreciate. Tim the Wizard, right? He gives you a wizard hat, it gives you magic damage. You can make a set with a wizard robe. But I'm not a mage. I should have boxed that water in, that was very silly of me. How could I go about this? There is water right here. So maybe I can exhaust the lava. And this is why I'm going to get enough obsidian, so spending the obsidian from earlier is not a problem. I can give you a specific example of why the enemy design either bores me or irritates me in... Oh, that's a problem. That lava also needs to go. Okay, I do have a bucket with me, so I guess I can show off something kind of silly that's always been a part of the game. I think I'll just mine out some blocks here, and that should work. Because at some point when I was fishing off camera, I decided to make a pool to fish in the forest. You see how I've set this up where there's a space where I could leave the water in this bucket? My inventory's quite full, but it's fine. That's why I got the void bag. So if I place the water up here... There's the bucket. Nearly lost my place. it'll split the water. Some of it will fall down there, and then a little bit will be left here. And I can bucket it back up, and that's less water than was in the bucket, but when I place it again, the bucket has the same amount of water in it. This is basically a bug or an oversight that was promoted to a feature, so you can basically duplicate water this way. And I think you're intended to do this if you want to fill something up with water in the early game. There's also machines with automated pumps that people make in order to just produce water like that, but I won't be doing that. I don't think it's really necessary. I messed around with those machines, but for practical purposes, I think you can just do this and it's fine. So anyway, the example in Dead Cells. I forget the name of the boss. It's a very early game boss. He's just a guy who does melee attacks. I used a weapon that gives you... Well, I don't know if it's a weapon exactly. It takes up one of your slots, and you just throw traps on the ground that root enemies in place. They can't move, right? And the way rooting an enemy was handled already pissed me off, because if an enemy is mid-attack animation, which that attack animation would be the enemy jumping forward in an arc and trying to hit you at the end of that arc, if the root runs out in the middle of such an animation, then the moment the enemy isn't rooted, it will continue flying towards you. Which is the kind of behavior that is so absurd that I'm not sure it would really even make sense in, for example, a cartoon. Imagine a cartoon character is stuck in a bear trap and he's trying to jump out of it. And then, out of nowhere, the bear trap disappears and the cartoon character just goes flying off. Like, it's not even that he tried to jump right at the moment when the... right after the bear trap opened up, right? No, like, the bear trap vanished. He had tried to jump before the bear trap vanished, and somehow there was momentum that carried over, even though the character was physically restrained from moving by the bear trap. That's what happens in gameplay terms in Dead Cells with some enemies, and in particular that boss, whose name I forget. It's a very boring boss otherwise. You can parry him to death, you can just DPS him down. He does nothing interesting or memorable. So I end up remembering him because of a ridiculous design choice. It almost feels like an oversight. The way I see it, if an enemy was stunned or interrupted, it should have to start its action over from the beginning. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's how it should work in most cases. Honestly, even Hades has this problem, where if you hit stun an enemy, the enemy has queued up an attack, and it will not do anything else other than try to finish that attack the moment it recovers from hit stun. So you could interrupt an enemy from a distance, or interrupt an enemy when you're next to it and it's trying to do a melee attack, and then you move away from the enemy, and now realistically the enemy is not in the middle of an attack animation anymore because you interrupted it, and now you're out of range of the enemy's attack, but it will still stupidly try to swing at you when you're on the other side of the room. What the hell is that? But yeah, I don't know about Dead Cells. I think I just need to cut my losses. I might try playing the game again out of sheer morbid curiosity, and it's a shame because I like what the difficulties levels of Dead Cells do. They remix enemy composition, they change enemy behavior, and I think there are like doors you can only access on higher difficulties, including a door after the final boss that requires a maximum difficulty, which I still am not spoiled about that. And I'm kind of curious what's back there. Dead Cells is one of those instances where I'm not confident enough to be more negative about a game, but I definitely don't enjoy it. Or haven't enjoyed it thus far, anyway. I was wondering why this water was not turning all of this into... There we go. Sheesh. I'm gonna need quite a bit of water here to get through this. Well, maybe not that much. This is a little boring. Consider this the podcast episode. That's kind of what it is. I have sort of an idea on what I want from the Underworld. Yeah, that should work out. I'm trying to think, are there even any memorable gameplay mechanics from Dead Cells that stuck with me? Not really. I think the most I could say is that contextual critical hits are a decent idea. But I could praise Team Fortress 2 for the same thing. And also curse it out for having random crits at the same time. Like, the better design decision is right there. Why do we need this? Why do we need this RNG in a competitive game? Anyway, that's another subject, and I'm not exactly a great Team Fortress 2 player. I'd say that's a game I played, again, because of high school friends, somewhat similarly to Terraria here. I think I'll need more water than that, but... Oh no. That's a type of trap I have not encountered yet. Okay, that water is forfeit. If you're really quick, you can plug up the hole before that happens. What the trap is there's a one-time pressure plate that makes these blocks non-solid, so entities and liquids can pass through it. It's a pretty creative trap, I'm not gonna lie. Of all the traps they added to the game, that's one of my favorites. Okay, it did fill out the whole thing, so now I can add more water. I don't want to exhaust the water as I dig. I think that's too dangerous. Or at the very least, the way I died digging obsidian in an earlier part was kind of embarrassing. But anyway, yeah, Dead Cells, when weapons can critically hit, it's always contextual. Like, there's a weapon that charges up, and if it's fully charged, charging it gives it damage the longer you charge it. But when it's fully charged, it's a guaranteed critical hit. And you can factor that into maybe other effects that care about when you land a crit or something like that. But I do prefer that to having to balance critical hit chance and critical hit damage multiplier in a menu, and then changing nothing about the way I play because I'm still just hitting things and killing them, same as always. I actually dislike those RPG stats. I sort of brought this up in the Star of Providence playthrough because they added crit chance and crit damage multiplier as an aspect of one of the playable characters, and I found it thoroughly uninteresting. There was another example of a contextual crit that I really liked. I think it was if the enemy is frozen, then you'll land a crit. So you wanted to use that weapon in tandem with something that freezes, because the weapon itself I don't think could freeze enemies. Anyway, I'm not an expert by any means on Dead Cells. But I can point out things that just seem strange to me, like The lack of mercy invincibility in Dead Cells strikes me as... Oh, this is another one of those traps. I'm not going to fall for it this time. But the lack of mercy invincibility strikes me as needlessly punishing, because there's a finite amount of healing in the game anyway. It's not like, say, Ultra Kill, where I completely understand that if mercy invincibility was a thing, then Ultra Kill's healing system cannot exist the way it is, because you'd be virtually unkillable. Like, even hard damage wouldn't work. Like, yeah, it limits your maximum life temporarily. But if you're invincible for longer than the limitation on hard damage lasts, well, I guess Hakita could have made it so that hard damage only goes away if you've spent long enough not being invincible. Oh wait, I made it through the lava. I don't need to do this right now. Whoops. The Windows key is right next to the Control key. That's silly. Maybe I could go into the settings and disable that, but anyway. What was I on about? It's funny, it feels like Ultra Kill has been out for a while, and yet I'm holding back from talking about it because in my head it's like the game is still in early access. But really, it's mostly done. So, anyway, maybe I'll... It's not completely out of the question for me to play Ultra Kill on the channel, so I'll hold back when it comes to that. In Dead Cells, I really don't understand why there can't be mercy invincibility, especially considering how hard enemies hit. Oh wait, I just remembered why. Oh my god, Dead Cells has the exact same problem as Ultra Kill. Briefly after you've gotten hit in Dead Cells, you can attack enemies to heal yourself. In other words, they ripped off Bloodborne. And personally, I was never the biggest fan of that healing system in Bloodborne because I felt like it... Well, I'm talking for so long that I've encountered multiple Tims when, as a mage, I wanted Tim's hat, and I couldn't get it because he wouldn't show up. Anyway. Yeah, that whole system in Bloodborne, I just didn't care for it. I felt like they could have made their own variation on Estus for that game that's thematically and mechanically different because of the different setting. But hey, Elden Ring is technically a different setting, and yet it still has Estus, so they could have just used Estus again, instead of taking us back to disposable, consumable healing items that are worthless. But that's a whole other discussion. But the whole problem with that is, again, the game is rewarding you for playing recklessly and getting hit by undoing the punishment of getting hit through aggression. So by copying Bloodborne, Dead Cells is making the same mistake as Ultra Kill in that because healing is practically unlimited and you can get it right when you need it after you've taken damage, then the player can't become invincible after getting hit because it would be very difficult for the player to die. And in the case of Dead Cells, there's an additional problem that I can tell. There's one-shot protection in Dead Cells, which is giving me horrible flashbacks of Risk of Rain 2, where I realized, oh, one-shot protection exists. That is the third lava trap. Huh. I am in that layer. I keep losing my train of thought. I'm terribly sorry. Risk of Rain 2. Right. I realized that Risk of Rain 2 has one-shot protection because there would otherwise be a very real problem where you just get one shot out of nowhere later on in the game because of the difficulty scaling. And it's because when compared to the original Risk of Rain 2 is much more lethal. At least there are ridiculous defensive options now with how they updated the game, but I remember you had chance to ignore damage, some max life, but the game outscaled your max life very quickly, so I don't think that was that big of a deal. It was still useful. If you grab it, that's fine. If that's what you get out of the chests, you're not gonna throw it in the trash, but even if you're moving at a decent pace, there just comes a point where big attacks will one-shot you. Which is why one-shot protection is a thing, so that doesn't end your runs more than anything else. And so runs are less likely to end from a single hit taken. I'm just looking at Dead Cells and I question, why is the game balanced like this? It's so all or nothing. It's kind of absurd. And especially when learning the game, I find it kind of frustrating. And the thing I learned from Risk of Rain 2, I think it's also true of Dead Cells. Just because you have one-shot protection doesn't mean that you can't die instantly. It's a band-aid fix to a general balance of punishment issue. And it doesn't even work as a fix because let's say you take 2 instances of damage back to back. Well, that's basically you dying instantly anyway. I would switch to my mining set, but I'm just kind of worried that I'll need to fight here. And let me refresh my summons. In both cases, I would just prefer that the games are balanced in a way where one of the most obvious fundamental aspects of a combat-heavy game, that the challenge and punishment of combat, specifically the punishment, should work. It shouldn't feel like the game's gonna fall apart if not for all of these specific quick fixes to its problems. Oh, that's a good place to stop digging, actually. And I think I could even do something like this. I'm pretty sure water evaporates in the Underworld itself, but not in the background wall here, right before it. There we go. So now I could just do a free fall down here and land in this water. Although I will eventually be immune to fall damage anyway, but it's a nice thought, right? That's what people used to do to get to hell and to be able to go to hell very easily whenever they want. If I use another option, it might be unnecessary. Oh yeah. Now's the time to throw on the obsidian shield. I'll forfeit some of my damage, I think. Because both the ore down here and these buildings deal damage over time on contact. The bats down here are like any other bat, but I like the demons. Their projectiles are quite memorable. So this is something that I need for that armor set. Now I could go back and make the armor set, but first I think it's time for me to mine some hellstone. One thing I like to do, this isn't the best place to do it, but rather than mining hellstone directly, which you could use obsidian skin potions, which make you immune to lava, just dive in the lava and mine out all these veins. I kind of enjoy just mining it through the walls of these buildings. It's not like obsidian skin potions are super rare or anything, but I get more than enough ore for myself just by doing that. I don't have to pay attention to the duration or make obsidian skins. It saves me an inventory slot. It might be inefficient if you just want to get as much ore as quickly as possible, but I'm also playing Summoner, and Summoner has one item from Hellstone that I care about, I'm pretty sure. It's worth noting that water walking potions would allow me to walk on lava as well. Tim, please. I've already seen enough of you. I actually can't remember ever seeing a Tim in the Underworld. That's a little strange. Trying to think. In the dungeon I got this shadow key, right? And shadow chests are found down here. So I needed to go into the dungeon to be able to open all the shadow chests. At this point it's just an instinct for me to grab that key from the dungeon and keep it on me. But I'm struggling to think of anything that a summoner might care about from those chests. I guess there's one generically useful utility item. Oh yeah, these are the lava critters. I would need to use Hellstone to upgrade the regular bug net if I didn't have the golden bug net. I kind of like that, actually. The golden bug net is not vitally important because I'm pretty sure it's random if the angler gives it to you from a fishing quest. I'll be leaving these sizable gaps in buildings that wall off travel. Not just if I run through again, but for a very specific reason. It might get me killed if I don't do that, let's just put it that way. In order to smelt hellstone into bars, you need obsidian and a hellforge. So it's a good thing I have extra obsidian. Not just for the last summoner set that I think I'll be using here, but for another summoner item and just in general. Especially if you're playing with more people and everyone's gonna want stuff from Hellstone. I do supplement my usual approach with mining out Hellstone like this. I'm not immune to lava, and yet it doesn't matter. Ah, there's a shadow chest. This is kind of a neat change on Expert. Lava slimes actually drop lava that spills out and down. This is just a decorative lava fall. It's because there's a half block right here. This is kind of confusing. I remember when they added these waterfalls to the game, and I thought that would kill me because lava is deadly. Sun Fury, that's not really useful, but I want to take the chest, so sure. The only thing about the void bag is I have to drop the items on the floor and then pick them up so that they go in automatically. But I think that's still more convenient than fiddling with the chest inventory and the void bag inventory at the same time. This is obviously just a worm enemy, but at least it looks cool. I do like the way it looks. For what it's worth, when fighting demons, I do enjoy dodging them and misdirecting their projectiles. Even the most basic of projectile mechanics are fun to play around. If I ever told you that I like shmups, because I do. Do not read my bio. It's a spoiler. What am I saying? I forgot that the Squire's shield has a unique graphic that's kind of cool. I think that's a new painting. Pretty sure each major area has its own paintings. Okay, I might be getting carried away with the hellstone mining. Not that. This. 92. Yeah, that's enough. I'm pretty sure. And that took quite a while. I might have dug the elevator off camera, but I felt like yapping. You could call it an authentic part of the Terraria experience, I guess. So next time I'll explore more of Hell, if only to make it more easily traversable. I think I have enough time to at least upgrade my gear while I'm here, so sure. Replace the furnace with the Hellforge. The Hellforge is just straight up better. Oh right, I do like the idea of right-clicking a crafting station so that you only see what can be made with it and by hand. That is a nice thing that they did. Yeah, I did the math in my head because I know that 1 bar is 3 hellstone. There's the upgraded net, but I don't care. This is the armor set from Hellstone. I almost accidentally made some of it, I think. It's for melee, so I do not care. But this I do care about, and here's the upgraded handgun, the Phoenix Blaster. It even sounds awesome. It's just a little bit of extra damage, but the handgun is already good, and with a good modifier and range damage bonuses, it's good moving into the second half of the game, as even, I would say. Oh, I did forget about the molten pickaxe. Okay, that was a little stupid of me. I'm gonna need this thing. It's one of the only pickaxe upgrades that's very important. It doesn't say anything in the tooltip, but it can mine ores that I'm currently incapable of mining. Well, that's fine. Fabled Imp Staff. I think that's the best summon modifier, because they added new modifiers to Summoner. 18% damage knockback. Armor penetration and tag damage. Those are new stats to these modifiers. I've heard mixed things. The new Summoner modifiers are better in the early game, not so good in the late game, but I guess I'll see firsthand. I don't really know. I don't enjoy games by running numbers tediously. I was able to craft that because it just used the hellstone directly from my inventory. Huh, yeah. All of this is unique. Okay then. I usually use shadow chests in some of my last storage options. Some of these chests are just in excess. Like all 3 of these wooden chests, I don't know what to do with. But later, when we enter the second half of the game, I'll store crafting materials from there in here, for example. In my head, shadow chests in the base are second half of the game stuff. I have a system. Oh, that's silt. What the hell? It's kind of pointless. I shouldn't be doing this on camera. And I'm almost out of time with how I'm doing this anyway. So, get these hornets out of here. I should just show off what I'm doing now. These are the imp enemy I killed, which I didn't talk about because it's just like the mages that shoot the destructible projectiles. It's the same enemy, it's just another palette swap. But these are flying summons with really good ranged attacks. High velocity fireballs that set enemies on fire. And I think they're pretty much the best summon I could get at this stage. I think I would want the Squire Shield equipped, so that's going to make a significant difference. And yeah. Okay. Not much progress and a lot of unfocused rambling, so next time I will have sorted out this mess in my inventory. I'm going to loot even more shadow chests, and I am going to end the first half of this playthrough. I feel like it's moved at a decent pace. I think, in hindsight, my Star of Providence playthrough was ridiculously long. 60 parts is something I see when you're playing, let's say, a JRPG or something. But there is a lot of stuff in Star of Providence, and they're only going to add more, so that does make sense. I feel like this is going to be over in 20 to 30 parts or something like that. So if you can't wait for me to play something much more interesting than this, you won't have to wait that long. Anyway, thank you for watching.